So in this video, I'm going to do a persuasive argument about anything to any demographic. That's really weird that you guys gave us that much freedom, because they usually give us a specific set of topics for a specific set of people, or really any of those details. But personally, what I'm going to be talking about is the over I don't know, that's kind of a weird way to describe things, but the way that the federal government has superseded state rights and why we need to undo that. Um, because as a nation, way back in the day, we were 13 colonies and we kind of all had our own business. New Jersey, everyone loved New Jersey because everything was legal there. But when it came to um, Virginia, it's much less relaxed. Um, and so the thing of it is, it was because they were each run individually as individual states. And I understand, along with the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, that it makes sense to have a federalized government. And I'm not saying we should do away with the federal government at all. But I'm saying that we need to downsize because at this point it is superseding way more than it needs to. Um, for example, when it comes to laws on, marriage laws or drug and alcohol laws, that should be up to the state because they know their citizens much better. Um, Similarly, education standards, procedures, everything should be decided on a state and sometimes even like county level because of course the state can kind of delegate that once they have that power, but at this point having the federal government reigning over all education, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, I've seen the analogy saying, um, why would the government tell doctors how to do their job if doctors are the ones that are trained to do their job? Same thing with education. Now it's different because education isn't a surgical procedure, but it's very important. It's formative. So if you have a trained professional who is ready to do their job and knows how to do their job, and yet you keep telling them what to do and how to do it, you're gonna have issues. That's why there's so many people pushing against Common Core at this point. Um, Even they brought in two teachers to help them write Common Core, and neither of them signed off on the final draft of what they made. Both of these professional teachers, one of them I think was a textbook writer, the other I'm not sure, but the fact of the matter is the two people they brought in as resources were against this, and why? Because the federal government put their hands where they didn't belong. Um, Similar with tax budgets, I understand that on a large scale we do need to pay federal taxes. I'm not saying that we need to destroy the federal government, but I am saying that we need to undo a lot of what they've done, because they are kind of taking over. The federal government, I think it's Thomas Jefferson said, the federal government can't be trusted to regulate its own power. It just won't work. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. That's why we have the Constitution, Declaration. The reason that, sorry, I looked up because I have it on my wall. The Declaration of Independence was created because the British government was making laws in places they didn't belong, like religion or taxing tea. Now, taxing tea, sure, whatever. The thing is, it was taxation without representation, which right now they are killing us with, and yet we're not doing anything. So the origin of this country is fighting back against a government that is taking too much power, and yet where are we today? We have a government that has too much power, doesn't know how to regulate itself, and what is it? Congress decides what their salary is. That's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. If everyone chose what their salary was, they would keep giving themselves raises. That, that's just a simple fact of the matter. There's not a single person in here that would choose to have less money. Um, so why do we trust the government to regulate themselves? We, as the people, should be the ones that the government fears, not the other way around. The beauty of the Second Amendment is that we won't need it until they try to take it away. So similarly, with our individual rights and state laws, we should be the ones running this. Another issue that I found is with the lack of power on the state level, nobody really cares about it. I have talked to a lot of people, and they could not tell you the senator, they couldn't tell you the mayor, their congressman, they couldn't tell you really anything involving their state government. They couldn't tell you governor, senator, anything. It's fact of the matter is they know the president and VP, Secretary of State, but they don't. When it comes down to a state level, nobody knows what they're talking about. My dad, he's 52 at this point, knows that. That's because he's been around and actually cares about state government. But on a general scale, most people don't because it doesn't really have an effect on a lot of things. I couldn't tell you what my mayor does. I don't know what mayors do. I would imagine they deal with things on a state level like road building or city planning, but because it's such a not important issue at this point, because the state rights have been so well decreased, I couldn't tell you. And I love politics, but just that's one thing that I've kind of pulled a blank on. I mean, just on a factual level, we should not be functioning as one conglomerate. That's the beauty of the United States, is that we do have our individual states' rights, and we do have this kind of broken up unity that we are. It's e pluribus unum, many together as one. It's on all the dollar bills you'll ever see, probably on quarters, coins, all that. It's many united as one. What is it? We're 50 states. We're 50 states. That's a lot of power. I mean, we are a huge global power considering that we are probably one of the youngest countries in the world. And so something that sets us apart is the fact that we do have our system of states, that we have the system in which we have smaller increments that we can break it down into. And yet we're trying to run it like it's some small country that exists under one roof. Like, why? Why? We are a country that is stronger and smarter than most of those that have come before us. We are a country of innovation, and yet we are falling to the same tropes that other countries have fallen to. This is not an issue of just the government has taken too much power, which it has, but it's an issue of we as a nation have become complicit and compliant in our government because we stopped caring who to control as long as they gave us what we wanted. This what is it? George Washington didn't want a two-party system. We've got a two-party system at this point. Now, we can't blame him. He was smart. Two-party system's not really working out, if you hadn't noticed, with the current election. But, there's a lot of things that our founding fathers wanted that have changed over the years. And you could say, well, it's a living, breathing country, so things have to change, especially as we grow older and larger. And that's a fair assessment. But when we have a structural system that has worked for our entire life, and yet we have slowly made it vanish, grounded away, dissolved the states' rights, and individual rights along with it, we're losing our heart, the heart of our country. We're also losing the individuality that made us different. Um, the United Kingdom is a bunch of different countries. They all have probably similar standards. It's very similar to the United States, where UK is, is similar, or I guess the UK has kind of been disbanded. Let's say before it exited the European Union. The UK was one body of many countries. Each of those countries had their own individual laws, but there was standards across the board. And I think there should be standards that the government withholds. Health standards, safety standards, overriding laws like murder shouldn't be legal, even if the state decides that. I mean, that's a easy example to say, but I think there should be absolute laws. But when it comes to matters of opinion, similar to medical marijuana or gay marriage, a lot of people, that's a point of debate, and that should not be something decided on by Supreme Court or the federal government, but it should be decided on a state level, because the state, in the end, is the one that has to deal with the consequences. They have to deal with the fallout and the logistics of it. So why is it that the government gets to decide the rules and then not have to pay for it? It's easy to just say, I want this to be like that and this to be like that, especially if you don't see how it affects anyone. But the state level has been incredibly decreased over the years, and I think it's a shame. I know that the Constitution's a beautiful thing, but the Constitution was originally meant to bring us together and unify us, because before the Constitution we were just a bunch of states that were living under the same roof. We were basically our own countries. But the Constitution afterwards was not intended to make us one entire federal government, but to be many smaller state governments overruled by a federal government that would but we would keep them in line. We as a people should not be afraid of the government. The government should be afraid of the people, because in the end, the government should serve the people rather than the other way around. We've got it backwards nowadays, and I don't mean to say that because there's a bunch of older people say, well, everything's backwards, but there are a lot of issues we have with this country, and I think it's partially because we have stopped caring and we've stopped paying attention. I'm personally reading the Federalist Papers. I know that that's not something that most people will do, especially someone my age, but I think it's important because I need to know where our country came from and why we believe what we believe. And I think that a lot of people have just decided, well, that's boring, that's old, and sure, it's hard to read. It's a lot of fancy big words. Alexander Hamilton had a big mouth. But when it comes down to it, if you don't do your research and you don't care, you're going to let somebody else run the country for you. You're going to let somebody else make the rules. Anyone who's not invested in politics isn't invested in their own future. And as such, we as a nation should be strongly invested in politics and how that affects our daily lives, and what ideologies we most identify with, and what compromises we're willing to make. The state government and the individual should be the one in power. I think that kind of wraps up my speech. I talked for about 14 minutes at this point. 14 minutes exactly at that point. And that, like I said, I talk a lot. This has been more, if you're looking for what my target demographic was, it was the American citizen. If you're not trying to talk to Yugoslavia, I don't think they really care about our government. But anyway, I think, yeah, thanks for listening. This has been my persuasive essay / audio-visual presentation about my personal speech that I've chosen the topic and demographic on. Thanks for watching. I know you don't have a choice since you're my teacher and I submitted this to you. But I appreciate it. Once again, and I think I spoke too soon yesterday when I submitted my assignment saying you're probably never going to see my face again. I should have known you would have got me with another audio-visual presentation. So, anyway, signing off.